Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to the course of Hospital and Community Attachment with the code of MEDI 3105. Let me introduce myself. This is Dr. Hana Al-Sumri. I'm from the Department of Family Medicine and Public Health from the College of Medicine and Health Sciences, and I have recently rejoined the department upon the completion of my PhD certificate in the UK. Today I will be covering some of the guidelines on how to write an essay report, and I will be meeting you more often in the coming lectures. I'll be covering mainly the epidemiological theory part of the course. I'll be doing that until probably the end of October, and afterwards my colleague Dr. Yahya Al-Farsi will rejoin the department, and he will continue giving the epidemiology lectures to you. I don't think I have met you before, any of you, but I'm looking forward to be able to do so soon, inshallah. We will be just meeting each other and giving the lectures, this course virtually, as you all know, because of the current situation of the pandemic. I'll be available on email, and that email address will appear on all of my slides in the coming lectures, where you can reach me out through. Unfortunately, I won't be available in my office for any of your inquiries, but if there is something very urgent or very necessary, we can arrange for a meeting on campus in my office if you wish. In today's lecture, I'll be covering some of the guidelines on how to write the essay report, as I've told you before. These guidelines are all available in your student handbook guide, which Dr. Moon, I'm sure he'll have shared with you or would upload on Moodle, but I thought it will be very useful for me to go through them and give a little bit more of explanation to make this task more clear to you. As you all know that writing the essay and submitting will constitute 10% of your total grade for this course. So let's get started. So in any report that you are writing, there are several components that we expect to see and to be able to follow and mark. And these components start with a cover page. So I'll list them here first, and then we will go to talk a little bit more in more detail about each component. So these are cover page, and then with a short summary of the topic that you are covering, and then we expect to see a table of contents, أو بالعربي نسميه الفهرس, and then we go to talk about an introduction of your essay topic, and that introduction takes you naturally to the aim and objectives and the scope of the objective that you will be covering. And then from there we expect to see all the findings of your search about that certain topic, and from the findings you end it with the discussion, and the discussion always will be ended with a conclusion and recommendations, and then you finish it off with references, and if you have any additional material, always goes back to the what we call as annex or appendix of your report. I'm sure you have submitted assignments before, or probably short reports, or you have seen or read some. And the first thing when you look at a report is a cover page. A cover page is simple and clear and with very few words. Usually it includes the title of the subject or of the issue, and in our situation there are different cases that you are asked to search about, or case scenarios. or topics. So you will list what you have chosen clearly in the center, and then we expect to see your student full name, your student ID, the date and the year of the submission. If you'd like also to mention the department where you're submitting this to, and sometimes it's optional for you to insert any logos, whether it's for your university or of the department where you're taking the module in, and usually the logos usually go at the top part of the cover page, to the right and to the left if you have more than one, and usually the cover page doesn't have a page number normally. You should use good font size for the title and a smaller font size for your name and your ID and the other information they want to include it in. Usually you use good colors, or if you stick only to black, that is fine, because it's a formal report that you're submitting to a university course. We don't want it to be very colorful and very with a lot of drawings or characters, unnecessary characters on it. From there, the first thing what we want to see after your cover page is a short summary of your essay report. And when we say short, we mean something around of a maximum of 300 words. And writing a summary is a skill. It's not something that necessarily you would get good at from the beginning. It takes time, even for well-known researchers, to be able to write a very concise summary that is short but is very focused, very clear, and it involves all the different components which are stating clearly what is the problem out there, what you are set to do, what is your aim and objective, to what you want to do about it, what information and findings you found about that problem, what conclusion you made out of it. In conclusion, usually it is the simple wording of a layperson can understand from all the figures and statistics that you have given in your findings. What does it say in general? What does it mean? And then come up with a recommendation based on your findings and your conclusion. And as I said, you might want to leave this till the very end of your report writing, after you have done it all, and then you will be able to decide what information you wanted to go into your summary, because you might be very excited to put everything you have found into the summary, but the summary always should be your selling point for your assessor or your reviewer. A good, well-written, clear, concise summary gives a very good beginning of the assessor of how well you have understood the subject that you have looked at, and how well you were able to decide which information should go into the summary and what additional information is not necessary to be in the summary but should be only in the main body of your report. From there, you go to what we call as table of content, and table of content is basically a way to help the assessor to look at the different sections of your report and get the page number where they can find what information. Like when you are looking at any other report or book or published thesis and so on. Some people like to do the table of content manually, but it's very difficult. I'm not sure if you know how to do it using the feature of Microsoft Word ribbon, where to be able to create a table of content, all the main headings and subheadings should be written in a format of a heading rather than just a normal text. And that is a feature in Microsoft Word, as I said. If you're able to do that, then you will be able to ask Microsoft Word to automatically generate the table of content where you want it to be, and it will do that for you, and it will give the page numbers automatically without you having to do it manually. For you who know how to do it, well and good. For those who are not sure of how to do it, you can simply go to YouTube. There is a lot of short tutorials. Choose which one suits you and makes you understand it better, and you can type just how to create a table of content of a report, and very simply it will show you how to do so. And that is how I have learned to do it when I was doing my work for the first time, because we haven't learned this anywhere before. And I can understand if you don't know how to do it, but you can always go to YouTube. There is very good, simple, user-friendly videos where you can just follow, and it will help you to create your table of contents. And then from there we go to the introduction section of your report. Now the introduction section, where the most of you're introducing your subject to the reader or to the assessor, and usually it is not very long, but it's also not very short. It should be of a good size, where it covers all the necessary information that needs to be covered. You don't get into the nitty-gritty of the details that makes the reader get lost, but you have to be very focused on what you want to say. And usually when you write the introduction, you write it in what I call it as a cone way of writing. You start talking about the topic in broad way, very widely, and then you get narrower and narrower and more focused into the issue that you are covering. So it's a good practice to start your introduction with writing and stating the purpose of writing out this report, and then starting with a background information. Background information usually can involve worldwide statistics of that issue or of that problem. If there is any definition of that thing that you are looking at, you need to define, so definitions can be there. You can talk about the health or the economic impact of that public health issue that you are studying, what scope of that issue you want to cover in your report. For example, if you're talking about pipe smoking in Oman, you can state that you don't want to talk about it in Oman in general among all adults in Oman, but you are focused to look at it only among university students in Oman, or only among male students in the university, to be more specific. So that is the scope of the issue. Because you don't have a lot of room to write about the topic in its broad sense, so you have to be focused. And all the statistics worldwide, and the statistics usually it's good in any health issue if you are writing to talk about the issue worldwide, like globally, and then get narrower and talk about it maybe in the content where we live, like in Asian countries. If you want to be even narrower and more specific, you can talk about it in the Middle East countries if there is information available, and get closer maybe to neighboring countries like other Gulf countries, and what statistics they have found about the scope of the issue that you're looking at. And then finally you get to any statistics about Oman, for example, and what we know about it in the country, in the area where you are looking at it. Introduction, usually it's not any information that you find you get excited about and you just put it into the introduction. You might want to read all the information out there available from the different sources. Could be journal publications, could be some reliable websites like the WHO website or the Ministry of Health website, and write down all the information together and see how you want to present it, how you want the information to flow in your introduction, what you want to start with, what you think the reader needs to know before what. So it's like a puzzle that you need to arrange and know how to present. And that is an art by itself. You can't just put things, what you find, you just put it on paper, and then you keep on going up and down, back and forth on around the same topic or the same piece of information in different places of your introduction. That just it's annoying for the reader, and it shows that you did not give it a good thought of how to arrange the information that you found in what we call as a literature, in your literature review of the topic. And the introduction, because always you get information from different sources, we expect it to be heavily referenced, because that is not your own information or own finding or own wording. So we expect to see references throughout your introduction section. And if you find that you want to subdivide the introduction into subheadings, you can do that. If it will make the information more clear and it flows better, so it is no harm to do that if you like to. For example, if you look at this slide in here, this is an introduction section of a published research paper, but you're not doing a published research paper here. That is why it will be a little bit different, but I want to give you the general idea of how to write an introduction. If you can see here, for example, they have decided to start first the topic with what we call as definition. They said pulmonary arterial hypertension and so and so. And you can see also here good information that when you want to use abbreviation in your report, you have to write it out fully the first time and then give what abbreviation you want to give. And then there is no harm in using only the abbreviation after you mention it in full wording the first time. Later on in the body of your report. So they have given a definition, and then they talked about the significance, the clinical significance of having this issue, and then they have written their literature review, or what we call, what information they found about it, what health impacts it has, what it causes to have such a condition worldwide, among who, and you can do your all literature review here, and then you can mention what gap is there, and here where it comes for your report to write what you are looking exactly at, and you want to do in this in writing this report about a certain topic. And you can ignore this because here it says you which study they are going to conduct to answer this question or to achieve these objectives. But here, because you are just going to write, you're going to just search about the information and write it as it is, you don't need to write this end, but instead you will be, this whole thing and this whole flow will instead take you to your main aim and objectives, which will come next. You'll be ending your introduction, and that should flow nicely from your introduction and what information you have given there to your aim and objectives. And then, as we said, it will flow nicely from your introduction, your main report's aim and objectives. Now, what's the difference between aim and objectives? When you talk about the aim, you talk about the general problem that you are looking at. But when you come to objectives, then you have to list them as 1, 2, 3, and 4, and so on. And these objectives are the tactical ways, or it's the practical way of what you want to look at and find out on that topic. For example, here, if you look, this is an example of a study that's being carried out in Zimbabwe. But if you look at the general aim, which is or the goal, is to evaluate if home-based care projects in Zimbabwe can provide, whether it can provide adequate, affordable, and sustainable, for example, care of good quality to people who have got the HIV infection or AIDS. And it has another goal, is to identify ways in which these services can be improved. So this is the general, is to evaluate a home-based care to certain group of individuals or patients. But how they are going to achieve this evaluation is going to be through a more specific ways, these specific ways which we call objectives. And it's first to identify the full range of economic, for example, psychosocial and health nursing care needs of those patients and their families who are affected with AIDS, and then they are going to determine the extent to which this support can be offered by service providers. So they are going to talk to patients, and then they're going to cross-check those with the service providers, and then they are going to determine the economic costs of such services of home care, and then they're going to relate that calculated cost to the quality of care that they can provide with such a cost, and so on. So you don't have to worry about the details, but the main message that I want to give out here is, for example, if you're looking at a problem, again, let's go with our example of the pipe smoking among male students, male university students, for example. So this could be you're going to say, I want to evaluate the use or assess the use or understand the use of pipe smoking among so and so in so and so, and what elements, what scope of that problem you want to go and find out about. You would list those as your objectives. For example, you want to know the statistics of how many of them do smoke it, for example, among male students in university students in Oman in general, and you probably want to, for example, compare that percentage of pipe smoking among male university students among those who are attending, for example, government universities compared to, for example, private universities. You want to see the gender differences, if at all, of pipe smoking among university students, males and females. You would want, for example, to compare that percentage of male university students who smoke pipe in Oman compared to other neighboring country or another Gulf country, and see whether those numbers, how do they compare and contrast with each other. So those specific information that you want to go and find out, you would list them under objectives. I hope that gives you a clear understanding. And let me just get your attention here about always the words like to evaluate, to identify, to determine, to study, to understand, to quantify, to relate, to compare. These always are phrases that we are expecting to look at or to read or to find when you list your aim and objectives. So try to use them wisely and correctly when you are listing yours. So by the aim and objectives, you end your introduction section, and by that you can start with the main body of the report, which is your findings. And you would always want to list the findings related to the objectives that you have listed. You don't want to list certain objectives and then go and get like pulled away by other information that you find there, and you feel tempted to include in your report or in your findings that you haven't listed as an objective, and it will be misplaced, or it will be looking weird to be seen there in your finding. So you would list all your findings, all the information that you got based on your objectives, And here also, if you want to divide these findings instead of just stacking them on top of each other into subsections with subheadings to make it clearer for the assessor, it is also your choice, and it would be also great. And here is the place where you can support all your findings with mentioning figures, statistics, adding figures, graphs, pictures. Just make sure that you get them from reliable sources and they're clear enough. Not necessarily always to be colored. If it's colored, then well and good. If it's not, then just make sure that it's clear enough, especially if you decided to print out your report and decide to do it black and white. Make sure if the figures or the pictures that you have used, if has gradient of colors like navy blue and dark blue and light blue, it will appear clearly when you use it or when you convert it to black and white, and it will still give the difference and it will be clear. Things like that you should also take into account. One more thing, always make sure that even tabulations, if you use tabulations, every table has to have a clear title, and the title of tables usually go above the table, while if you use graphs, pictures and figures, usually the title of that graph or picture goes usually at the bottom of the picture. Now sometimes tables, when you copy paste them, I know this is not your own work, this is not your own data collection, so it's fine to copy and paste, but make sure that it's clear enough, because sometimes it looks hazy and looks like with blurry a little bit when you do that. It's not a bad idea if you copy that table all over again and create it from scratch in Microsoft Word to make it clear. From there, you go to the end part of your report, which is the discussion. And the discussion, usually, mainly you start it with a summary of all your findings. It's a good idea also to remind the reader why this report or why this essay was conducted in the first place, what was the set goal and objectives in summary, and then summarize all your findings, whether you want to list the main findings, the main numbers, and it should be also like a selling point of your report to give the most appealing finding in your discussion. And then always you want to include findings from other reports to yours. Now, because these findings are not your own research or your own work, but probably you would just focus in one subject in among a group of population in one geographical area, and you would like to compare it with findings similar to that but in other areas in the world, and you want to compare what they found and how it is different from our findings, whether their numbers or their statistics are higher or lower, whether the risk factors or the causal factors are the same as found here or different. What is the impact of that health issue? Is it the same or is it different? And it's good to know about other places and what they found. And then it is a very, very good practice for you is to be able to comment on findings from other places and give interpretation of why they're similar or whether they are different from ours. Now, you might not be right in your interpretation of the reasons, but you can always make that very, very clear that it is your own thinking or your own interpretation, and that is totally fine. Actually, that gives you extra point that you have tried to do some interpretation and give some argument to the findings in your discussion. If you look at here, Dr. Chan has included this as an example in your guide of what a section of a conclusion would look like. And of course, don't forget to reference your comparisons to findings published somewhere else. I want you to pay attention to this here. If you can see from this last paragraph here, it says one possible explanation. And here clearly it says that this is speaking the mind of the report author or the writer, which is you supposed to be. And it clearly says that one possible explanation. That means you are trying to give to resonate or to interpret the findings of reduction, for example, of so and so is so and so, can be related or can be contributed to different reasons, and that is totally fine. One thing of how you can start thinking about interpreting results, that whether they compare or they contrast with findings from other published paper, is to think about our demographic characteristic of people in Oman, to think probably about our legislation and our policy, that whether it helps or it works against certain health issues to emerge or to happen. You can think of reasons related to cultural and religious background, our upbringing, probably our infrastructure. These are all our environmental factors, our genetic makeup that makes findings on health issues different to other places in the world, for example. And there is no wrong interpretation if you say I think so, or it is a possible explanation of so and so. And there were always recommendations can follow from your own theory or from your own thinking of trying to explain your findings, or when you want to compare your findings to other places in the world or other papers. So that's why it takes you to your conclusion and recommendation. Sometimes it is very hectic for the reader to read all that different information and then your discussion and your comparison. So somebody wants to know what is the take-home message from your report or from your essay or from your research, and that will always come in the conclusion part. So in the conclusion, you are trying to use simple, straightforward, basic language to say what you have found and what does it mean. Not everyone who can read numbers and compare numbers or figures with other places or other published paper would understand what you want to say at the end of your paper. So you have to put that and state that in simple phrase, what does it mean for people who are interested in health planning or in health services, or in changing, for example, certain protocols or certain legislations or certain algorithms or way of patient care. So what does your finding tell them in general, and what does each conclusion will lead you to what recommendation? For example, if you find a lot of male university students do smoke pipe because of influence from their friends, then what do you think would be the solution to that problem? And that will come into your recommendation. If you find that boys do smoke it more than girls, then why do you think the reason, and what would be the recommendation to tackle that issue? If you find it in Oman more than neighboring countries, what might be the reason? What do you conclude out of that finding, and what do you think the suitable recommendation would be in that case? And probably here, if you're talking about countries, then you want to think about more of legislation or policies of a higher standard to control that issue, for example, and so on. And remember that all that would follow your discussion. Sometimes they recommend that, for example, here for every conclusion, that there should be at least one recommendation. This is one way of how to put it, but it's not necessarily that is what you're being asked to do. Sometimes you can summarize all of them together and put it into a conclusion and then list the recommendation as 1, 2, and 3. And something very important that I need to highlight here when making your recommendations is, and that even skillful researchers can fall into that mistake, is that you have to recommend things based on your findings and what you have found. You cannot get too excited and recommend something that is not supported by what you have discussed or what you have found or what you have mentioned in your report. For example, if you're talking about again the pipe smoking among male university students, you cannot come up with a recommendation asking, for example, policymakers to stop, for example, offering pipe smoking in different restaurants in Muscat region, for example, because that doesn't cover the population that you have looked at, which is university students, and it doesn't cover the area where you think that problem exists and that you were interested in, which is on campus of the university, because restaurants are outside that area, and it covers a population of all of Oman, adults, and whether they are university students, whether they are women, whether they're foreigners, or so. You cannot recommend something that you haven't looked at and you haven't found any information that you did not present in your report. So your recommendations should be confined to your findings and supports, because it's just further support your findings and your discussion. So be very careful in what you are recommending. Sometimes the recommendation sounds fantastic and sounds giant and nice, but it's not related to what you have found and what you have discussed and what you have listed, so you won't get any points for that. And it's very important in the discussion to see a lot of your thinking, your words, your language, your interpretation, rather than just keep on copying and referencing from different papers. And that what gives the reader the impression that you have given it a good thought, that you understood the subject, that you have understood the problem as well, and you gave it a little bit of logical thinking and rigor of argument, and you could argue the results and you can interpret. So that's always a bonus point. At the end of your report, everybody will be expecting to see references. Now, some people, they do the references manually. If you are happy with that and comfortable with that, then well and good. But it is good practice to start knowing how to use some referencing programs. And I have recommended here one good one, which is Mendeley, and I have listed the website where you can download a desktop version of it, and it will be installed directly to your Microsoft Word. You will just need the task of creating your own library into this program, which means that whenever you go and look at any published paper, you can extract the citation, and that is always, you can get any published paper from Google Scholar, if that is the engine that you are using. Any paper, you can get an option at the side of that paper or at the top to ask you to cite that article. And many many articles do support Mendeley citation, so you'll get a form of citation that is compatible with Mendeley, and you can extract it straight into that. So once you create your library, you have put all the papers and all the references in the Mendeley, then after writing any text in your Microsoft Word document and you want to cite that, so you go to Mendeley, you choose from which paper you got that information, and it will be straightforward cited into the text. Now there are different citing styles, how it appears within the text, whether as numbers, and that is usually the Vancouver referencing style, or it can appear in different forms like the author and the year of publication, but that is mainly in sociology, not mainly in medical field, where we prefer to see citation as numbers. Of course, at the end, if you are using a program such as Mendeley, when you reach to the referencing page or section of your report, then you can easily, with a click of button in Microsoft Word, you can ask to insert bibliography. And bibliography is just listing all your citations in this format that you see here. Now, I don't know if you know that or no, but if you cite from a journal, then it will look something like that, and that Mendeley or the citation program or referencing program can easily create that from you, because when it extracts from a published paper, it knows that it has to be into this style. Or if you got that information from a book or a chapter, then it will be changed into this format. What is the difference? It differs in names of author, the order of the year, or if, for example, if a journal, then there will be first the name of authors and then the name of the article, and it will be followed by the year of publication and number of issue and number of volume, and then this will always mean the number of pages where that article was within that journal. And similar different information, you'll get it from a book, or if you take it from a website source that you might use, like WHO, we have said, or Ministry of Health. If you're going to use it to get some more information, especially that Ministry of Health website is rich of annual reports with a lot of statistics related to Oman health care in different years. All right, so that is that for the references, and then you would move at the end to something called annexes or appendices. And usually when you write a short report or an essay, we don't expect you to have appendices. But if you write like thesis for your master's or PhD, usually you would have material to be put into this section. So this section is nothing but it's any additional information that is too detailed to be mentioned within your main body of your report or of your thesis, but you think that the assessor would be interested to have a look at, and you can point it out within the text that for more information on this you can check Appendix A or Appendix B. And usually the appendices are listed as letters. For example, here I have given you an appendix that is constitutes of a glossary. Glossary is just like a dictionary where you think some of the medical words needs to be defined, but you don't feel that is the necessary information to be put within your text, and because your word limit doesn't allow you to do that, but you think that the assessor would be, it's very beneficial or useful for the assessor to have a look at, so you can point it out as an appendix. And here they have also, some people will put all the abbreviations in an appendix with a full wording of that abbreviation. They will just type it out in a different glossary or a different abbreviation list, and they will put it as an appendix. For example, if there are a lot, of course, that's again in large documents I'm talking about. To end this session, we thought that we will be giving you topics to have your essay reports on, so it's not that you can go and choose whatever topic you want. So we have chosen different topics, and each topic has a different group of people where you can search that information about. You choose one of them, and that is only to help you make your report more concise and can match the word limit that we have asked you for. So for example, for water pipe smoking, you can choose, if you choose to do this topic, you can do it either among university students in Oman, or you can choose to look at this information among people in the Arab countries. And the second topic, we chose to look at the impact of the aging population on the healthcare services, whether you will do that on elderly in Oman or just among aging male in Oman. The third group of topics that we suggested for you is to talk about complementary alternative medicine, which is traditional medicine. So you either look at Indian people in Oman who are practicing this type of medicine, or you can choose to look at this topic among people in the Arab countries. So it's up to you. Now here, Dr. Moon tried to give you, for example, two of the topics and some of the issues that might be worth for you to have a look at and try to list as objectives and to write about. And these are only suggestions. Again, it's up to you if you find other information related to these topics that you feel interesting to include them in your report. But this is just a way for you to start going and start thinking about the different topics and what sort of things that you can try and look for and include. At the end, these are all, as I told you, it's mentioned in your student guide, and you can always go back to you. But a few of the things that I want to highlight here is that many of the things I have mentioned already, but things like that the report should be, of course, in English, and the number of words we expect to see between 2000 and 2200, and this is excluding the annexes, the references, the tables, the summary, and the table of content. So if you highlight everything else other than this and you go to a word count feature in Microsoft Word, it can give you the word count of your text, and you can just double check that you are not too short or too long from that limit before your submission. And then we expect to have a font style of Times New Roman, and for the font size to be 12, and all the sentences to be one line and single spaced. You know by now that your assignment of the essay report is going to cover 10% of your total grade in this course. And we prefer that when you submit it as PDF, but also you can give it as a Microsoft Word format. The only worry about Microsoft Word format that sometimes it acts funny if you have tables or pictures or graphs and you send it. When we open it, things will be upside down, or the title will be misplaced of these things, or the table might go to a different page and it will look messy. I personally prefer that once you finalize your report and all the tables and figures are in place, is to save it as PDF and submit it as PDF. Now the submission either will be you submit it, you upload it on Moodle, or you submit a printed hard copy of your report to the course coordinator's office, and that Dr. Moonchan might talk to you more about it when you're about to submit, which way he prefers more. We expect to receive all your reports by week 13, and that is roughly by 10th of December. So that gives you a good 3-month time from today to start thinking about what you want to write, start looking for information, gathering it down, and start writing bits and pieces of it whenever you have a free time within this course, to be able to submit on time, because late submissions usually will be penalized and most likely won't be accepted. So you don't want to keep things till the very end and then end up with late submission. Last few things for you to remember to get a good grade is that it's very useful to use always headings and subheadings in your report to make it clear and to help guide the reader in what you are doing, because sometimes we tend to stack things up together and we feel that it's clear because we have worked on it most of the time, but when the reader comes and read it for the first time, it might not look very neat. Use of paragraphs is very important. I know sometimes we tend just to put the information one after another, but make sure that if you feel that you have covered a certain area of or side of a topic, do it in one paragraph. If you're moving to a different area of that same topic, even in the same section like introduction, to start a new paragraph, and make yourself use of the habits of writing short sentences. Sometimes we tend to say a lot in one sentence, and that one sentence will be too long and doesn't read well. So try to break it down and know where to break it and how to start a new sentence. Page numbering is very important. Sometimes if you leave it till the end, you tend to forget it. So you have to make sure that it's there. Please make sure that you use the feature in Microsoft Word to check your grammar and your spelling. It's very annoying to read a short report that is short and that has been given good time for students to work on, and then you just find that it is full of spelling and grammar mistake. It's very disturbing, and always it works against you in terms of the points that you can get. Make sure you use clear figures and tables from reliable sources, and I have mentioned and I've touched upon this in the previous slide. And plagiarism is doing something like a misconduct. You're not allowed to copy from each other, you're not allowed to use each other's sources, but also plagiarism means more than that. It means that each finding, table, figure, picture that you take from any other source other than your own work is for it to be referenced. Otherwise you will be looked at as being stealing a property or a right that is not yours. But also plagiarism means that you're not allowed to copy paste exactly from your sources. Yes, you're allowed to look at different references, different sources, and take the information, but always make it a practice for you to rephrase the sentences a little bit from your own words, your own style, and not to copy exactly what is being mentioned there, especially when it comes to interpretation or explanation, because copying exactly from others, that also is one type of plagiarism that as a university student you're not allowed to do. I hope by this it is clear for you what you're expected to do and how you're going about it. As I said, if you have any info, any question, anything that is not clear, you can always email me, and my email appears in the front page of these slides. And have fun with this task of writing a report. It's a very good practice. It's a very good exercise for you to indulge in, especially that you will be required to conduct a report of your own research in the coming semesters. I think starting in research methodology to start writing proposal. So if you get into the habit of starting writing this, so that will prepare you very well for a more advanced task in the future. So that is that for today, and I'll be talking to you in the coming lecture. Thank you for listening, and bye bye for now.